And African governments must place credible industrial policies at the center of their macroeconomic strategies if countries are to achieve growth that is inclusive. That was the main thrust of the Economic Report on Africa, the yearly flagship document produced by the African Union Commission and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. The report argues that while Africa has experienced sustained economic growth above 5% over the past decade, with some countries even reaching above 7%, the contribution from industrialization was minimal.
The message is simple. Industrialization is a precondition for Africa to achieve inclusive economic growth.
We try to demonstrate it's not just about wanting to turn around the fortunes using commodities as an entry point. It's about industrial policy as a whole. We need the coherence of the institutional frameworks, we need the right incentives. We need also to realize that our industrialization cannot be an imitation of what others have done. We are latecomers, we basically don't find the same environment as others had. So we have really to do it differently.
Lopez believes the timing for Africa is just right. The continent has higher levels of education, knowledge and value addition than countries in Southeast Asia had before they took off. Assets, he believes, requires just the right policy frameworks to ensure the region thrives.
Well, it certainly makes the case. It makes the case by insisting first that our productivity in the sectors that really matter, particularly agriculture, is extremely low. And that means that the majority of the population that lives out of agricultural production is going just to go down in terms of its capacity to integrate an inclusive society. They are going to move from poverty in the rural areas to slums in the urban areas. Unless we do industrialization, because industrialization is the only possibility we have to create the massive number of employment opportunities that are linked to modernization.
Africa's share in global trade is way below potential at around 3.3%, while intra-Africa trade is also low at 11.5% compared with other regions.
What we mean by it is that basically each country will find their way organically. This is not about a blueprint, but it's about a certain number of principles that have to be followed, one of which is political determination and coherence. You can't do it as a sectoral policy. You cannot say that you are going to treat industrialization the same way you treat another sector. You have to make it the center of macroeconomic policy. That is the big difference that the report is proposing.
The report focuses on how to build effective and flexible industrial policy organizations to enhance structural economic transformation in Africa.
In the case of South Africa, we have to bear in mind that it is a mature economy compared to other economies in the continent. What it means, it's basically the dependency on services and the financial sector in particular is very different from what you would find in other economies. So the only way South Africa is really going to tackle the issue of employment is not just by doing industrialization, as it is doing, in our opinion, very well, but is also to make sure that its dependency on the way it deals with the mineral sector is going to change.
He says South Africa's mineral sector continues to be trapped in a model that is old-fashioned. We asked him to explain.
The entire structure of production that is very much trapped into migrant labor, that is not conducive for the type of stability that you would expect from this sector. The transformation and value addition in the mineral sector is still not where it should be. Certainly the relationship between South Africa and its neighbors when it comes to mineral production is very much one that can benefit from better integration of the economies in the sub-region. Of course, SACU, the Southern Africa Customs Union, gives that potential, but the full integration is not there. In one word, South Africa fortunes depend very much on the way it relates to its neighbors.
Lopez welcomed criticism that too much state intervention could have pitfalls, but argues state intervention needs to be sophisticated.
I like to call it smart protectionism. You need to make the rules work for you. And for that to happen, the state has to be extremely sophisticated and not be the interventor directly on the industrial production, but rather the one that creates the conditions for it to work.
The report also warns that greater industrialization will cost, urging African economies to find new sources of finance and make better use of existing resources. Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
With that, let's take a look at how African markets and currencies are performing.